Look, hello everyone. I just wanted to provide a quick update on a new program that's opening today. The Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund is a multi-billion-dollar program that helps communities with the cost of infrastructure that's required to build more homes in their communities. This is a $6 billion program. The portal that opens today is for the first $1 billion that will be applicable for direct applications from communities across Canada to access this fund. It's part of a larger program that will also include bilateral agreements with provincial governments who will enter into arrangements where they will agree to share a portion of the cost to build more homes over the next number of years. We do anticipate that over the course of the balance of the calendar year, we're going to roll out the first $1 billion of this program directly to cities who are willing to implement certain measures that will make it easier and more cost-effective to build homes in their communities. For clarity, this is another program that Mr. Poilievre has vowed to cut completely from the handful of programs we put on the table to make it easier and more cost-effective to get homes built. What's astonishing to me is during a release from the Conservative Party very recently, he seemingly now banned his MPs from actually advocating for their communities. It's a normal thing in the course of governance that members of Parliament from different parties would submit letters of advocacy, have conversations with the governing party in order to secure funding for their communities. Losing that advantage is something that I find hard to believe personally. But when it comes to the cuts that he's promising to make, he was very clear that it wouldn't just be the Housing Accelerator Fund and the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund, but he said there would be additional cuts being made. Anytime a politician stands up and promises to make cuts but won't actually tell you which programs they're cutting, I think Canadians deserve answers. We see over the course of the Conservative Party's history, in fact, Mr. Poilievre's history, he's made promises, in fact, actually taken actions to cut seniors' pensions. He's signaled that he doesn't support programs that deliver funds directly to families to help with the cost of raising kids. I wonder about the veracity of the agreements we have with provincial governments to actually invest in the healthcare system so they can hire more family doctors. We know housing is on the chopping block, but to the extent you have an opportunity to find Mr. Poilievre, I know he avoids you at all costs, but should you have an opportunity to find him, I would invite you to ask questions. What other programs is he actually going to cut? Alors, juste en français, aujourd'hui, j'ai bonne nouvelle. Il y a un nouveau programme qui est ouvert pour l'application directement pour les communautés qui font une application du gouvernement fédéral. Le programme est pour soutenir des efforts pour couvrir une portion de le coût pour l'infrastructure qui est nécessaire pour construire du logement. Alors, juste pour clarifier, c'est un programme, M. Poilievre fait une promesse de couper complètement. C'est difficile pour moi d'accepter l'habilité pour le gouvernement de couper le programme, mais aussi dit ce n'est pas possible pour les députés pour soutenir des applications de leur communauté. Pour moi, c'est essentiel. J'ai l'habilité pour les no, pas pour I want to say avocat, but as a lawyer, as my background in law, pour soutenir ma communauté quand il y a une opportunité pour obtenir des fonds fédéraux. Ce n'est pas OK pour moi d'exclure l'habilité pour le député conservateur pour soutenir leur communauté. C'est une décision intéressante, mais mauvaise selon moi. Dans les prochains quelques mois, c'est possible pour investir proche de $1 milliard pour construire des infrastructures qui est nécessaire pour construire des logements aussi. Very happy to take any questions that you may have on a day when we're trying to support
Minister, are you doing that? Why are you doing this update today, 1 week after Mr. Poilievre made his engagement?
Look, the timing actually, we expected, and I'd said this a few months ago, we were targeting the end of November or end of October actually to roll this out. There was a few days behind schedule. I was traveling for G7 meetings up until Wednesday of this week, but the portal is open today. This was many months in the works. The actual opening of the program is coincidentally just days after he vowed to cut the program. I know he had tried to make the point that the program was not yet open for application. I expect if there's anything more than a coincidence, it's because he came to understand the program was to open soon, so he could make that point, given that I had spoken publicly about the estimated timeline a few months ago.
L'argent qui est signé, Monsieur le Ministre,
Juste appeler le nom, s'il vous plaît.
Les fonds qui ont été signés, les ententes, comme avec le Québec,
Okay.
il y a déjà eu des ententes.
À propos du logement,
à propos du logement, du fonds d'accélérateur.
Okay, oui.
Vous avez déjà signé des ententes. Est-ce qu'un gouvernement futur, comme un gouvernement Poilievre, pourrait retirer l'argent ou c'est déjà envoyé?
Selon moi, il y a un entente qui a notre gouvernement conclu avec le Québec. C'est incroyable, M. Poilievre a coupé l'entente qui existe maintenant. C'est une entente légale. Si je suis la province de Québec, c'est une opportunité pour faire un défi, poursuite.
Oui, une poursuite judiciaire.
OK, c'est possible, mais ce n'est pas une décision pour moi, c'est une décision pour le Québec. Mais si notre gouvernement continue dans le côté pour le gouvernement dans la Chambre des communes, il y a un entente et j'ai respecté. Quand le gouvernement conclut une entente, c'est essentiel pour assurer les partenariats, les provinces, les territoires, les communautés. Le gouvernement est ici pour assurer l'entente est sûr. Mais M. Poilievre fait une promesse de couper ce programme. Maintenant, il y a 8 000 unités de logement. Ce n'est pas juste possible sur l'entente. Il y a 7 000 qui annoncent dans les mois passés. Il y a une opportunité pour une autre entente avec le Québec, avec le nouveau fonds dans ce programme et les négociations avancées très bien. Québec est les juridictions, les seulement provinces qui égalisaient l'investissement de le gouvernement fédéral. Quand nous avons l'habilité pour augmenter le nombre de logements avec un partenaire qui égalisait les investissements, c'est une entente très bien pour le Québec. C'est incroyable pour moi quand M. Poilievre a fait une promesse de couper ce programme.
Have any Conservative MPs reached out to you already about this new program?
This new program, not yet. There would be no applications in the system. Today is the first day. I expect in the normal course of things, and in fact, I received emails even today from NDP colleagues on different programs to advocate for their communities, seeking updates. That's very normal. The normal process is that the government would announce a program, would develop and make the program available, and you usually see letters of support once local members of parliament understand their community has just submitted an application or is about to submit an application. So in the normal course, we would usually see in the next number of weeks, the next couple of months, as we start to consider applications, those letters of support, the phone calls, the quiet conversations in the corridors with MPs advocating for their communities. Given Mr. Poilievre's announcement, it seems that Conservatives are no longer allowed to speak for their communities when engaging with me or my colleagues, and that's surely a disappointing thing, because there are a number who've advocated for projects to me previously that we've actually ended up funding, and now to see that those voices will be missing is something that I'm sure their communities will be very disappointed about.
Does that have any impact on your approval of those projects if those communities aren't allowed to advocate?
So we try very hard to have an objective consideration of the application based on how many homes is it going to produce, what difference is it going to make. But when local MPs have the opportunity to fill in the gaps, it can, and in fact has in the past, made a significant difference. I think about, just to give an example, though we were looking very closely at the support for infrastructure with the Port of Prince Rupert, given its extraordinary impact on the well-being of the national economy, we had an NDP MP, Taylor, great guy, helped set up a meeting with the local mayor to make sure that I had an understanding of the urgency, given the fact that the water pipes were chipping, were on the verge of failure, and that we needed to get out there in order to allow them to start the work rapidly. Under the normal course of things, those kinds of projects actually could potentially not get approved on a timeline that the situation in a local community demands. Now, we may have ended up in the same place at the end of the day, but when you actually have a relationship with members in different parties, you can work together to actually meet the timelines or the demands of a given project that the program criteria and process may not have organically produced on their own. So advocacy from local MPs absolutely makes a difference. And to see that an entire party is saying we don't want their representatives to be the voice of their community in Ottawa, meanwhile you expect them to parrot the talking points from the leader's office every time they stand up to ask a question, it's unbelievable to me. MPs should represent their communities in Ottawa, not their leader at home, and they've taken that away from their members.
Do you think this might hurt that relationship, that they might be reticent to send letters and advocate for your communities if they're worried that it might be used against them later on, like it was done recently?
So to be clear, when we started talking about Conservative MPs who were writing me letters, those were MPs who were actually doing their job. That wasn't to demonstrate that we were using anything against the MPs who sent me letters. It's to point out the extraordinary hypocrisy when an MP actually goes about doing their job and their leader tells them they're not supposed to. When they, on the one hand, ask for the support of a government program, but on the other hand, support their party's position that the program shouldn't exist at all, I think it's right for their communities to understand that. There's a number of mayors who've reached out to our office, who've even put out public statements saying how disappointed they are that they now have members of parliament who won't stand up for their communities. I think members of parliament have an opportunity and, in fact, a duty to stand up there for their communities, and now they're being told they can't even stand up to their leader. This is the kind of behavior that is clearly bucks the expectation that communities have when they vote somebody in to represent them in the House of Commons. And to see that members of parliament would diminish their opportunity to make a difference in their community by foregoing their ability, their unique ability, to speak on the floor of the House of Commons to support communities, to reach out to ministers who have the opportunity to deliver millions of dollars to their community, it's incredible. There is a very precious piece of real estate, a few square feet in that House, that every MP is entitled to for a very short period of time. And to see any member that would not take the advantage to make the most of that is extremely disappointing to the people who've elected it. Okay, merci tout le monde.
Est-ce que la cible intérimaire de 2026 est déjà ratée, selon vous?
Non, pas du tout. Si vous regardez le dernier rapport de l'Institut du climat, qui est une organisation indépendante, cette organisation et d'autres, en fait, estiment qu'on peut encore atteindre notre objectif intérimaire de 2026 et que si on continue d'aller de l'avant et notamment d'ajouter de nouvelles mesures, comme nous venons de le faire avec le plafonnement des émissions pour le secteur du pétrole et du gaz, nous pouvons atteindre la cible de 2030.
Quel est le principal obstacle à l'atteinte de cette cible?
Bien, le manque de volonté politique du Parti conservateur du Canada, le fait que plusieurs provinces refusent de travailler avec nous et travaillent constamment contre nous. Imaginez pendant une seconde un Canada où le fédéral et les provinces, comme c'est le cas dans d'autres pays, travailleraient ensemble pour l'atteinte d'objectifs ambitieux en matière de lutte au changement climatique. Ce qu'on pourrait faire, ce serait extraordinaire.
Sorry, Mr. Guilbeault, the Employment Commissioner has slammed your efforts 2 years in a row now to bring down greenhouse gas emissions. Would you like to react to that? Also, can you give us an update? The last December, I think you said you hope to reach 36.2% reduction in emissions by 2030. Has that number been updated?
So the first thing I would say is thank the Commissioner and his team for their work, and we have accepted all of the recommendations. And I think we can do better when it comes to transparency. And I agree with him. We need to continue moving forward to implement measures to reach our 2030 targets. In his report, he points specifically to the fact that we need to move ahead with a cap on the pollution of the oil and gas sector. We just did that this week, so the Commissioner didn't know that at the time that we would be announcing it, but we're continuing to moving along with the implementation of our plan. But I should point out that it's the first time in Canada's history that our emissions are going down because of measures that the government is taking. Our emissions are at their lowest level in 25 years. And there's a stark difference between what we're doing and what the previous government was doing. According to the Climate Change Institute, if not from the measures we've put in place, emissions in Canada would be 41% higher than what they are now. So we're reducing emissions while the economy is moving full steam ahead, which has never happened in the history of our country.
So what do you want to tell to Canadians who are seeing that report, seeing that your government has been in power for 9 years and we've only seen about a 7% reduction in emissions? How are you going to, make up for that when you only have 6 years to hit your target?
I would rephrase what you said, because it's not just a 7% reduction in emissions. Because when we came into power in 2015, we were going to overshoot our 2030 targets by almost 30%, 1/3 more than what was committed by the previous government, except they never did anything about it. So we brought that line down, and we've reduced emission another 7%. It's the first time in the history of Canada that we have a fair shot at meeting our 2026 and our 2030 targets. But there's a big if here, and the if is we need to continue moving forward. We need to continue putting in place measures to fight climate change. If Pierre Poilievre is elected at the next federal election, we will go back decades in time, because he has no plans to fight climate change and certainly has no plan for the economy.
By law, the department under the Act is required that if Canada is going to miss its targets, to implement additional measures in its progress report. But the Commissioner in his report today said that out of the 32 that the department had put in its progress report, 22 of them them were ones the department had already reported on. And so where's the willpower, I guess, as far as putting new measures in that you talk about when the department's already recycling measures?
Let's talk about new measures. Since I've been Minister of the Environment, we've implemented clean fuel standard, zero emission vehicle, methane, oil and gas cap. We will be announcing in the coming weeks final regulations for the clean electricity standards. We've eliminated fossil fuel subsidies, which no other G20 country has done. That's political will to me. Merci beaucoup. Bonne fin de journée.
Mr. Barrett, what do you make of the latest revelations about Minister Boissonnault? His company said it was wholly Indigenous owned. What do you make of that?
Justin Trudeau's minister from Edmonton has demonstrated himself to be untrustworthy, and we've seen that his judgment is lacking at best. His business partner has been found to be in contempt. That's a matter of privilege that'll come before the House immediately following the current Liberal scandal that's paralyzed Parliament. But these new revelations follow after, of course, Justin Trudeau's minister, his contract that he owned 50% of, had bid on contracts with the government for which Randy Boissonnault came in front of a committee, as did his business partner, and both claimed that they hadn't been in communication with each other when the texts were revealed with Randy's name being used in them. So he claimed it was another Randy, but after we brought receipts, showed them the text message, he said, well, we did exchange text messages and we did talk on the phone, even though my staff had said it would have been impossible because of the cabinet retreat. So we have this problem where you can only believe what Randy Boissonnault says, as long as you don't bring receipts. Well, we've brought receipts, and we've shown that time and time again he's not being truthful. So we're going to have questions for Randy Boissonnault about this, but it seems like this company, which frankly was a pandemic profiteering exercise by him and his business partner Christian Anderson, but it's just absolutely unbecoming of someone who to serve their community well, someone who wants to serve in Parliament, and definitely someone to serve in Cabinet. We've said before Justin Trudeau should have fired his minister for this. Now we see experts in the latest reporting saying that, if proven to be true, that he should be expelled from Cabinet. We think that, if it's the police should deal with, because if someone is claiming something true when it's not, when they're applying for federal funding, well then there's reason for the police to investigate.
Do you believe Mr. Boissonnault needs to answer to this? There seem to be some statements from his office of this is Mr. Anderson, he was in charge of the bidding. Would you like to hear Mr. Boissonnault answer to these kind of allegations of he worked for owned a wholly Indigenous company?
Well, of course he has to answer for them. I mean, he continued to own this company right up until he was compelled to appear before a parliamentary committee. So this is it's incumbent upon him that he answer for this to Canadians, to Parliament, because he was getting contracts for a company that he was a 50% owner of while he was serving in Cabinet. And this same company made these claims, and so we're going to have to see what Mr. Boissonnault says as far as being able to square that. But the other problem is that you can't believe anything that he says, because he's been demonstrated to be untruthful with the statements that he's made before committee.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Est-ce qu'on vous a dit pourquoi la réunion du comité des langues officielles a été annulée?
Je pense parce que M. Brock a fait des excuses en chambre.
Vous avez dit ça? Que c'est pour ça?
Il me semble, puis ça leur a pas laissé le temps d'inviter des témoins.
Pas encore, on est en discussion. Vous n'avez pas décidé de la retenir, qui aurait donc provoqué l'annulation de la réunion?
Pas encore, je vais y parler aujourd'hui dès que je le vois cet après-midi dans la Chambre des communes, mais...
Qu'est-ce que vous avez pensé des excuses du député Brock?
Écoutez, j'apprécie qu'il les a faites. On a demandé que ça soit fait dans un forum qui est de la au ministre Duclos.
Est-ce que ça répond à tout ça? Peut-être?
Qu'il les fasse quand la Chambre des communes, une fois après la période de questions, comme ça tout le monde est là pour entendre ses excuses. Il a décidé de les à la fin de donc c'est à vous de
comment dire, conclure. Moi,
Ah non, non.
vous savez, j'ai demandé que les excuses soient faites dans été faites. Maintenant qu'il a décidé de les faire de la façon qu'il les a faites, c'est une décision que les Canadiens doivent conclure. Je crois que honorablement, ça aurait dû être fait pendant que tous les membres sont présents pour enfin, comment dire, respecter encore de nouveau qu'est-ce que je suis en train de prouver comme le point.
Est-ce que vous tendez à croire que ça serait suffisant à passer à autre chose au comité,
Oui,
sans retirant la motion vraisemblablement?
On va sûrement passer à d'autres choses, oui, parce qu'il y a d'autres choses qui sont plus importantes. La plupart, comme on dit, les excuses ont été faites d'une forme que ça leur paie à eux. Maintenant, est-ce qu'on va débattre là-dessus? Je ne pense pas. Ça ne sert à rien. Je pense que vous savez bien, on ne veut pas perdre du temps. On veut mettre l'emphase sur des choses qui sont plus importantes pour continuer à promouvoir et à protéger la langue française.
Merci beaucoup.
Bienvenue. Au revoir.